flips. I'm talking about fucking boomers and their god awful music taste a lot of the times
because the government made all that music happen. The Doors, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, the Beatles.
About that,
the government made the Beatles. All right.
Yeah, actually, it was MI6 and the CIA that gave John Lennon and Paul McCartney their first experience and their only experience with LSD. People think
that was their only experience?
Yes. People think for some reason that the Beatles are these huge druggies that just took a bunch of drugs all day, every day. No. They're professional musicians who played their asses off for a decade before they got famous.
I was under the impression, I mean, I know through stories that they with marijuana and cocaine before their really experimental phase musically, but I was under the impression it was about the time Sgt. Pepper's was happening that George Harrison was getting all into like Hinduism and gurus Hinduism gurus and shit, and that's where he and John Lennon and I think Paul McCartney did LSD. I could be wrong.
I'm not aware of George doing any drugs. What I do know is that Paul McCartney and John Lennon both experienced LSD via, I think, John Lennon's dentist, who ended up being like on the payroll of MI6, who was charged with a specific
that's the
task.
fucking song off of Revolver, isn't it?
How do you know that?
It's well researched at this point. You can watch
that Dr. Robert off of Revolver. I believe there was a
Revolver
song.
is it's the last song on Revolver. Turn off your mind, relax, and flow downstream.
That song fucking kills.
It's a great track.
Love that song.
So that was the only time that John Lennon and Paul McCartney, while they were in the Beatles, did acid. Everybody thinks that they were a bunch of druggies and they did acid all the time, but there's no evidence to suggest it, and there's never been any proof. And by the way, Paul McCartney did die.
Oh God, you're a subscriber to that.
They killed him, bro.
The Paul is dead.
Paul McCartney was a big fan of Stockhausen, and he provided.
Stop really quick so that we can bring Casey up to date on this. Okay, so there's a
theory he's dead.
It wasn't just a theory. There was a whole movement back in the day of people theorizing that Paul McCartney was dead. Someone was playing.
So there's like you're saying there's.
I Am the Walrus, when you play it backwards, the theory is that says actually Paul is dead. Paul is dead. Paul is dead.
And then if you play back Strawberry Fields at a certain speed, it says it's John's voice going, "I buried Paul."
Yep.
But okay, the idea
According
is
to Wikipedia, he is not dead.
Yeah.
Good source.
Oh, wait, so who's the guy that's walking around that says he's John, whose wife thinks who is this guy?
Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney of the Beatles was the more innovative of the four Beatles. He was the one that had, I think, the most to prove, and also the strongest vocabulary of kind of the modern music of the time. And by the time that Rubber Soul came out, the British government became increasingly concerned that they were going to have a more outsized influence on television programs like Shindig and other things that were running in the UK at that time that were music shows.
That the Beatles were going to have an influence.
Yeah, in a big way. And so instead of that happening, the United States invites them over to do the Ed Sullivan Show. So the Beatles were being tracked by MI6 and the CIA from the very beginning because of their huge popular fan base in Hamburg, which they took a bunch of amphetamines and did, I think, 2 shows a night for like 2 years straight.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you get famous, right? Is by doing that. Because that's how you do music, is by relentlessly performing and honing yourself every day.
How do you know that's true?
Hold on, to give you some quick context, the Beatles did lean into this whole Paul is dead thing with their branding on their album.
And it works
what do you
great.
mean dead? Like he actually
died.
They planted articles in the stories, in the magazines.
It was in
about him.
It was on their fucking. It was in their fucking album artwork on the vinyls. Like there's like a picture of all of them in white tuxedos, and all of them have red roses except for Paul has a black rose.
Paul is facing the opposite direction on the other album, on the street.
Oh, I'm about Abbey Road.
Abbey Road. Yeah.
That, and also he has bare feet because he's getting buried.
Yep.
And the other members in the Beatles were claiming that he had died.
No, they were claiming he didn't die.
No, yeah, they didn't say anything about it.
They didn't have anything.
They played into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, and this is
money.
The kind of this is like a precursor to the way that Andy Warhol saw art and how you kind of establish yourself as a character within the society. It's a precursor to all that. And so what it leads to is the realization that popular music promoted by the governments and the militaries of the world at the time were already at that point in time becoming too powerful and too out of control, and they had to dial it back. And so there was a massive cultural undertaking by these agencies who now comprise the Five Eyes to use music as a way to kind of put a pacifier on further human intellectual development. And it's working.
Are there released documents from these alphabet agencies that talk about this?
The MK Ultra program is the best example. It yielded actually some of our best thinkers. And it was all in an effort to figure out how to combat this cultural development. Ted Kaczynski came out of that.
They specifically were using music to control and target culture.
And LSD.
Oh, yeah.
Charles Manson was part of this.
Yes, he fucking was.
Yep.
Ted Kaczynski. And like that's
they're all
still
smart guys.
That's still like in the like regular whatever media contested. That's bullshit. That guy that released the book, I forget who it was.
Yeah, he was on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Very good book. Very good book.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't finished it because I keep falling asleep because I'm putting it on at night when I go to bed. But it's really fucking interesting.
I edited the audiobook of it.
Oh, no shit. That's badass.
I used to work at Audible.
That's what I'm listening to. Fuck yeah.
There you go.
That was a clip from the Awful Music Podcast. You can find the entire episode at the link in the description, and you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.